response. To get a glimpse of how these challenges, let's talk to Leonard Triyono from VOA Washington, who is with us live by phone.
Hello, good afternoon, Aisha.
Good afternoon, Mr. Leonard. How are you?
Yes, this is, well, fine. Thank you very much. Thank you, Aisha.
It's in the morning there, right?
Good to see you. Good to see you.
Good to finally see you too. I really hope that you are in good health. And let's talk about, if you can tell us what the challenges are there and also how serious are they?
Yeah, that's, well, you know, some people consider it serious, but, you know, because the U.S. is so huge, geographically, and also huge in terms of its population, this seriousness is often overlooked and not felt by certain groups of people, frankly, you know. However, the vast majority of most people, of the population feel it, and you know, to a certain degree, they have to struggle to live through it. You know, they have to live check by check, meaning that they have no leftover money for savings, or, well, for example, some other things like vacations or fine dining, things like that. You know, so. It's pretty serious, but, you know, to certain people, it's more serious. To other people, it's less serious. Yes, you're right. Yeah, you asked about what the challenges are. Well, number one, you mentioned earlier about inflation, but let me start with, you know, that one, because in your news earlier, you mentioned about, it was reported about the inflation. The inflation rate is pretty high, you know, according to the Labor Department, and this was published only on the 10th, which is 5 days ago, actually. The annual inflation rate is 8.6% for the past 12 months, you know, so that's pretty high. And it is actually the highest since 1981, so it's been over 40 years, you know. And before the current year, last year it was 8.3%. So the inflation rate has been crazy. I'm sorry for using that term, but it's been very, very high, as you reported earlier, you know. So. And that brings us to the problem, the challenge number two, you know, what you call it, they have the term here, consumer price index has been rising, has been high. You know, the hike has been quite substantial, you know, and what it means is that prices of goods and services also go up. You know, good example would be the houses. The prices for the houses now are very high. Gasoline is very high. Food and basic need for living, they are all pretty much a lot more than the prices that we experienced like a year ago. So, you know, so for example, prices of house, for example, has gone up 16% during the last year, and food prices, you know, the basic needs that we need every single day has gone up by 10.8%. I'm sorry for dealing with these numbers. You know, numbers are boring. I'm sorry, Aisha, but I have to mention them, you know, to give you perspective. And the energy, the BBM, what you call it, the gasoline, has gone up 35% from last year. So, for example, the average the average price of gasoline, which is the regular, you know, the cheapest would be around $5 something now, like $5.25 yesterday, for example, you know. So that's quite a bit, you know. It affects the livelihood of the people because Americans are so dependent on private transportation. You know, we have a lack of public transportation here. We are so used to using our own cars, you know, so that's a problem. So that's give you an idea, you know. By the way, the gas prices have been so much that it's been the highest. You know, even if we factor the inflation, you know, it's been the highest since 1970. You know, over 50 years. Aisha?
Yep. So I guess it's a major change, and like overwhelming, maybe such an understatement for that. And it has become a phenomenon for like shrinkflation, if I may say. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, that's the phenomenon. Thank you for mentioning that, Aisha. You know, that's well, that's the term coined by some British people, I think. Yeah, you're right. The inflation, of course, is so high that it has caused some shrinkflation. That's the term. You know, but in the U.S., of course, it has to be done legally. It is done legally since all the packaging, you know, for all the packaging companies, have to put information about the weight, the volume, the number of items, and some other things, you know, of course, as you know, dietary or nutrition information on the packaging, you know. So these are all what you call it, legally, but without being announced. So people do not know about it. But if they are careful, they can read on the package, for example. They can see that there's been, you know, what as you said, shrinkflation. You know, the number of items, for example, have become less. The weight may be less. And the volume is probably less with the same price. This is just to give, you know, some psychological effect, I think, because people would probably still buy things if the price is the same, but actually they don't realize that the weight or the number of items or the volume has been has gone down, you know. So, but that's done legally here, because if companies do that without putting, you know, the right or the proper information on the package, that would be illegal. Yes, you're right. And I think that's been the phenomenon everywhere anyway. But yes, in the US, we experienced that. I can give you an example. For example, a small box of Kleenex, for example, it used to be 65. Now it's only 60, for example. And some other things, for example, yogurt, which the weight used to be 5.3 ounces, now has gone down to 4.5 with the same price, you know. So that's an example of shrinkflation. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's about like downsizing, actually, right?
Yes, you said it just right, Aisha. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not only happens for the grocery items, but also in the fast food chains. And I believe it also change and affect customer shopping habits.
Absolutely. Yes, sure. Well, I said earlier, people probably do not feel about it, but because it's not announced, you know, although it is disclosed on the package. For example, if you buy a can of soup, for example, you can read it there. And if you are careful, you can compare it from last year, for example. Oh man, last year it was a can of soup. The weight, the volume was, 5 pounds, 5 liters, for example, a liter, for example. But now it's only 0.8 liter. But only if you read it carefully and you care enough to compare it from last year. But people do not realize it, you know, because it's not announced, you know, and the price is the same, you know, so they thought, well, the price is the same. They don't realize it. Yeah, Aisha. And I'm sorry, I lost your last question, actually. Was it a question or comment, probably? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I asked if that will affect the customers' behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it does affect the behavior of the customers. As I said earlier on the outset, people have to struggle, but and most people have to struggle, and so that's why as it was in your news earlier, the Fed is right now, they are in a meeting now, and they are scheduled to make the announcement on the benchmark rate hike. Benchmark interest rate hike. Probably it's at 10 o'clock in the morning here. So 10 o'clock, what is that in your time? It's probably 9 p.m. there. Yeah, it's 9 o'clock tonight in Jakarta. They are going to announce it. That's the thing that because they believe that by doing by increasing the interest rate, they believe that of course the goal is to decrease the inflation, because as we all know, when interest rates are high, when they are, pretty high, this would cause goods and services to become more expensive. And then, also the banks and businesses would find it very more expensive to borrow money to expand business because the rates are very expensive, and the cost of the house or car would be also more expensive because people here are so used to using credits to buy house and cars, unlike in Indonesia. A lot of people in Indonesia buy a house or cars in cash, right? But here people are so used to using credits, so when the rates are high, it becomes more expensive. So the customers would probably think about spending less money, and that means reducing the demand for goods and services. And at the end, when the demand decreases, prices would decrease too. And when prices decrease, they hope that would reduce the inflation. Yeah. Aisha.
So then let's just hope that whatever the announcement later on will be a good news for everyone, especially for the people in the United States, and the inflation will decrease and go down by time.
Thank you. That's very good of you. Thank you, Aisha.
And thank you very much, Leonard. Have a good day to you and stay safe over there. Nice talking to you.
Likewise. Thank you. Nice talking to you, Aisha.